The richest man in the city looked at my son before he looked at me, and in that 1 second, I knew my secret had just walked into the worst room possible. Noah was burning up in my arms, his little face pressed against my neck, while a woman in diamonds stared at me like I had dragged trash onto her polished marble floor. I tightened my grip on him and kept moving. I needed this catering shift. I needed the cash. Rent was due in 48 hours, Noah had a fever, and pride did not pay for medicine. Then one of the event managers blocked my path and looked me over from my discount black dress to the little boy on my hip. Staff are not allowed to bring children. Her voice cut sharp. Especially not into the Holloway gala. Heat rushed into my face. Humiliation always came fast. I know, I said. My sitter cancelled. I will stay out of sight. I just need tonight. She did not even try to hide her disgust. This is not a shelter, sweetheart. That one word hit harder than it should have. Sweetheart. Cheap. Disposable. Easy to dismiss. I swallowed it for Noah's sake. Then his small body jerked against mine. Too hot. Too weak. Panic punched straight through me. I turned for the service hallway, but 2 guests stepped back like my sick child might stain their gowns. Somebody get her out of here, one of them said. Noah whimpered. I felt the whole room tilt. And then a man's voice cut through the noise. Low. Cold. Final. No one is throwing her anywhere. The room went still. I turned and saw him. Ethan Holloway. Tailored tux. Controlled face. The kind of power that did not need to shout. His eyes moved from Noah to me, sharp enough to strip the air from my lungs. He did not look kind. He looked expensive, dangerous, and deeply annoyed. What is your name? He asked. Claire Bennett. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. His gaze dropped to Noah again. Noah lifted his head, half delirious, and stared right back at him like he knew him. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then he said the last thing I expected. My driver is taking you to a private clinic. I should have said no. I should have run. Instead I stood there, clutching my son. While the richest man in the room looked at us like we were a problem he had every intention of solving. And somehow that felt worse. Because the way he stared at Noah made one terrible question rise in my chest. What if Ethan Holloway had already seen something I had spent 3 years hiding? Noah was still burning in my arms when Ethan Holloway turned and expected me to follow him like people always did. I hated that my feet moved anyway. His driver opened the back door of a black town car that probably cost more than every car I had ever owned combined. I stopped cold. No, Ethan looked back at me, already halfway to the curb, his face unreadable. Your son needs a doctor. My son needs air, Tylenol, and a mother who does not owe favors to men like you. The words came out harder than I felt. Inside, I was shaking. Humiliation still clung to my skin from that ballroom. So did fear. Ethan stepped closer, not soft, not warm, just direct. This is not a favor, Ms. Bennett. It is the fastest way to keep him from getting worse. He said my name like a fact, not a kindness. I should have walked. Instead Noah let out a weak little cough, and my whole body betrayed me. I got into the car. The private clinic was 12 minutes away. It felt longer because Ethan came too. He sat across from me in the waiting room, still in that perfect tuxedo, still looking like the kind of man who had never once been told no and meant it. While Noah got checked in, Ethan folded his hands and studied me the way people studied damage after a storm. Why bring a sick child to a gala? There it was. Judgment. Clean. Expensive. Sharp. I lifted my chin. Because babysitters quit, landlords do not care, and people like me do not get to miss shifts because life falls apart. His eyes narrowed. People like you? Poor women, I snapped. Single mothers. The kind rich men look at for 5 seconds and decide we must be careless. For the first time, something shifted in his face. Not guilt. Not exactly. More like irritation that I had named the game out loud. Before he could answer, a nurse came out with Noah, and my son swayed so hard his knees buckled. My heart stopped. I dropped beside him, catching his little body before he hit the floor. Noah. Baby, look at me. The nurse frowned. His fever is climbing fast. He needs fluids and observation. I barely heard the rest. All I heard was money. Bills. Another number I could not outrun. I stood too fast. Give me the discharge papers. I will take him home. The nurse blinked. Ma'am, that is not a good idea. It is the only idea I can afford. Then Ethan stood, reached for his wallet like this was the simplest thing in the world, and said, "You are not taking him anywhere." I turned on him instantly. You do not get to decide that. His gaze locked on mine. Cold. Steady. Absolute. Then tell me this, Claire. If I do not step in right now, what exactly are you going to do? For one brutal second, I had no answer for Ethan Holloway, and I hated him for seeing that. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because the truth was ugly. I would have taken Noah home, prayed his fever broke by morning, and lied to myself that I still had control. Ethan read it on my face before I could speak. That is what I thought, he said, low and cold. I wanted to throw his money back at him. I wanted to tell him men like him only helped when they wanted ownership in return. But Noah leaned weakly against my shoulder, and pride suddenly felt like the dumbest thing I had ever carried. Do it, I whispered. But this does not buy you anything. Ethan did not even blink. Good. I am not interested in buying you. The nurse led Noah away for fluids, and I stood there with empty arms, shaking so hard I had to lock my knees. Ethan stayed beside me, not touching, not comforting, just there. Somehow that made it worse. A pediatric doctor came out 20 minutes later with a chart in one hand and a tired smile on his face. He is stable. High fever, dehydration, nothing we cannot manage tonight. My lungs finally worked again. Then the doctor glanced at Ethan, then back at Noah through the treatment room window, and smiled wider. Funny thing. The kid has your eyes. Time stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Every drop of blood in my body turned to ice. I laughed too fast, too thin. He is not his. The doctor lifted a shoulder. Could have fooled me. Same coloring. Same stare. Ethan said nothing. That silence was worse than any question. I could feel him turn toward me. I did not look at him. I could not. My hands were already trembling. We are done here, right? I asked the doctor. As soon as the fluids finish. I nodded once, then moved fast. Too fast. I grabbed my coat, my bag, Noah's small sneakers, anything I could reach. I needed out. I needed air. I needed distance before Ethan started connecting things that should have stayed buried. I got Noah discharged the second they allowed it. By the time I reached the front desk, the driver was waiting. Ethan was not. Relief hit so hard it almost buckled me. Good. Fine. Let him stay in his perfect world. Let tonight end here. I hurried outside into the cold, clutching Noah against me, and made it 3 steps toward the curb before a black sedan rolled forward and stopped right in front of us. The back window lowered slowly. Ethan sat inside, one arm resting against the door, eyes fixed on me with that same sharp, terrible calm. Then he said, "Get in, Claire. We need to talk about why your son looks like me." Ethan Holloway saying my son looked like him should have been the only thing in my head. Instead, the second I saw his face through that half-open car window, another night crashed into me. Rain. Neon. A hotel bar. A stranger with tired eyes and a voice too calm for the kind of pain behind it. 3 years earlier, I had walked into that night already broken. Daniel Mercer had just finished turning my life into a joke. I had found out he had opened credit cards in my name, drained what little savings I had, and then stood there acting offended when I called it betrayal. "You are overreacting, Claire." I can still hear him. Smooth. Annoyed. Cowardly. Everything I did was for us. For us. Men loved that phrase when they wanted a woman to bleed quietly. I had stared at him in that parking lot, soaked through, humiliated, feeling my whole future slide out from under me. "There is no us," I told him. My voice shook. But I did not take it back. Then I left before he could lie again. I ended up at the first hotel bar I could find, rain dripping off my coat, mascara half gone, anger holding me upright. That was where I met him. Ethan. Only I did not know he was Ethan Holloway then. He was just a man sitting alone with a glass he barely touched, looking like the room did not belong to him any more than it belonged to me. He glanced at me once. Then again. Not predatory. Not smug. Just sharp. Seeing too much. "Bad night?" he asked. I laughed without humor and slid onto the stool beside him because I had already lost enough dignity to stop pretending. "That depends. Do you want the polite answer or the honest one?" Something almost smiled in his face. Honest. So I gave it to him. Not everything. But enough. Enough to tell a stranger that betrayal felt worse when it wore a familiar face. Enough to admit I was tired of men deciding my worth with money, convenience, and timing. He listened. Really listened. Then he said, "People only use power carelessly when they have never had anything taken from them." I turned to him then. Really looked. Clean jaw. Dark coat. Expensive watch I was too upset to read as a warning. A man made of control and edges. Dangerous in the quiet way, not the loud one. I should have walked away. Instead I asked, "And what has been taken from you?" His gaze held mine for 1 second too long. More than I let people know. A horn sounded behind me. Hard. Sharp. Present. I flinched back into the freezing night outside the clinic, Noah warm against my shoulder, Ethan waiting in the black sedan like the ghost of that stranger had stepped into daylight wearing his real name. And when he said, "Get in," all I could think was this: if he remembers me before I am ready, everything I buried will come up at once. That should have been my warning. A stranger who understood too much was never going to stay harmless for long. Back then, in that hotel bar, I should have taken my drink and left. Instead, I stayed. Ethan did not crowd me. He did not flirt the way men usually did when they saw a woman alone and hurting. He just sat there, steady, watching me like I was saying something worth hearing. That was what got me. Not charm. Not looks. Attention. Real attention. "So what now?" he asked me that night. "You go back to him?" I let out a bitter laugh and wrapped both hands around my glass. "I would rather sleep in my car." His eyes dropped for half a second, like that answer landed somewhere personal. "Good," he said. "People who betray you do not deserve access to you twice." The sentence hit hard because it sounded like he was not only talking about me. I turned on my stool and studied him. The expensive coat. The tired eyes. The kind of restraint that looked practiced, not natural. "You talk like someone who learned that the hard way." His jaw shifted once. I did. That should have ended it. 2 damaged strangers. 1 conversation. 1 rainy night. But something in me had already started leaning toward him before I realized it. We talked for another hour. About nothing that should matter and everything that somehow did. Family. Expectation. The exhaustion of being useful to everyone except yourself. I told him I was tired of being chosen only when I was convenient. He looked straight at me and said, "Then stop letting people choose for you." Nobody had ever said it that plainly. Nobody had ever made me feel like I still had a future when mine had just cracked open. When he asked if I wanted to get out of there, I said yes before fear could catch up. Not because I trusted men. I did not. Not anymore. But because for one reckless night, I wanted to feel like my life still belonged to me. By morning, the spell was already breaking. He was standing by the window, phone in hand, face turned hard by something urgent on the other end. "I have to go," he said. No explanation. No softness. Just sudden distance. I told myself that was fine. Better, even. Until an hour later, in the lobby, I saw his face on a business magazine someone had left on a table. Ethan Holloway. Billionaire heir. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. Because the stranger I had trusted for one night was never a stranger at all. The second I saw Ethan Holloway's face on that magazine cover, I understood exactly how stupid I had been. Not because I had spent one night with a stranger. Because he was never a stranger. He was the kind of man with a last name that came with gates, assistants, headlines, and women like me getting laughed out of the room before we even reached the lobby. I left that hotel with my coat buttoned wrong, my pride barely stitched together, and one clear promise to myself. Forget him. Then 3 weeks later, I stared at 2 pink lines in a drugstore bathroom and felt the floor drop out from under me. Pregnant. My hand covered my mouth before the sound could escape. Daniel had already done enough damage. Now this. I sat in my car for almost an hour, rain tapping the windshield, trying to breathe through the panic. I told myself I would handle it alone. Then I thought about the man at the hotel bar. The one who had looked at me like I was not disposable. So I tried. Once. That was all I had in me. I called Holloway Holdings. A polished female voice answered. "Office of Mr. Ethan Holloway." My throat tightened. I need to leave him a message. It is personal. A pause. Cold. Professional. Mr. Holloway does not accept personal calls without clearance. I forced the words out anyway. Please tell him Claire called. He met me 3 weeks ago in Boston. He will remember. Another pause. Sharper this time. Then the voice came back dipped in polite contempt. "I am sure he meets many women, Ms. Claire. Do not call again." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone until the screen went black. That should have been enough. It should have taught me the lesson. But hope is cruel. A week later, while waiting at a grocery store checkout, I saw him again. Not in person. On the cover of a business section insert, standing beside Victoria Sinclair in a perfect cream dress, both of them smiling at some charity merger event like wealth itself had learned how to pose. The caption called them New York's most anticipated power match. I laughed once. Small. Empty. Then I folded the paper and put it back. Whatever I had with Ethan existed for one rainy night and nowhere else. He had his world. I had a child growing inside me and no room left for fantasy. So I made the only choice that felt survivable. My baby would be mine alone. And standing outside that clinic now, with Noah warm in my arms and Ethan ordering me into his car, I realized the lie I buried 3 years ago had just started breathing again. I knew the moment I got home that Ethan Holloway was not going to let this go. Men with that much money never chased answers halfway. I laid Noah down on our pull-out couch, tucked the blanket under his chin, and stood there longer than I needed to, watching his chest rise and fall. Safe. For tonight, at least. My phone lit up with an unknown number. Then again. Then once more. I did not answer. I already knew who lived on the other end of that kind of persistence. By morning, the fear had changed shape. It was quieter now. Sharper. I walked Noah into daycare, turned the corner, and saw a black SUV parked across the street. Not flashy. Not random either. My stomach tightened. I kept walking. At the catering office, my manager barely looked up from her desk before saying, "You have powerful people asking about you, Claire." What exactly happened at that gala? My pulse kicked hard. Nothing. She gave me a tired look. "Do not lie to me. A man named Mason Reed called. Wanted to confirm your employment history. Said he was with Holloway." I went cold. So this was how Ethan played it. Not with shouting. Not with threats. With quiet pressure. With people in tailored suits pulling threads until your whole life came loose. I grabbed my next delivery sheet with shaking hands and told myself one thing over and over. He does not know. Not yet. By noon, I started to wonder if I had said that too soon. When I stepped out the back entrance for air, a woman was waiting beside the brick wall like she had every right to take up my space. Cream coat. Perfect hair. The kind of beauty money polished into something hard. Victoria Sinclair. I recognized her from the magazine before she even spoke. Her eyes moved over me once. Efficient. Dismissive. "So you are Claire." No hello. No pretense. Just assessment. I straightened. "Do I know you?" "No," she said lightly. "But I know Ethan. Which means I know a problem when I see one." The words landed exactly the way she intended. Clean. Cruel. I should have walked away. Instead, I held her gaze and said, "Then maybe you should look in a mirror." Something flashed in her face. Small. Mean. Interesting. She stepped closer, close enough for her perfume to hit before the warning did. "Whatever game you think you are playing with him, stop now. Ethan does not get distracted by women like you unless there is a reason." Then she smiled. Cold as glass. And I would really love to know what that reason is. By the next morning, Victoria Sinclair had already made good on the threat in her smile. I walked into the catering office and knew something was wrong before my manager spoke. The room was too quiet. Too careful. She would not meet my eyes. Then she slid a folder across the desk and said, "The Holloway account is gone. Effective immediately." My stomach dropped. What? She exhaled hard. "The client requested a reset after last night. Different staff. Different image." "I am sorry, Claire." Image. That was the word rich people used when they wanted to ruin your life without sounding cruel. I felt heat crawl up my neck. So I lost my income because my son got sick. My manager looked pained, but not enough to save me. "You lost it because powerful people do not like surprises." I stood there holding the folder like it might turn into rent money if I squeezed hard enough. It did not. An hour later, I was sitting in a plastic chair at Noah's clinic, staring at the estimate for follow-up treatment and prescription costs. The number looked impossible. Then Mason Reed appeared in the doorway like he had been sent by the same nightmare. "Ms. Bennett. Mr. Holloway would like a word." I almost laughed. Does Mr. Holloway usually fire people before making job offers? Mason did not react. "He is downstairs." Ethan was waiting beside a black sedan, coat buttoned, expression flat. I stopped 3 feet away. "You got me removed." His eyes held mine. "I got you an alternative." He handed me a slim envelope. Inside was a temporary administrative contract with the Holloway Foundation. Better pay. Steady hours. Health coverage. My pulse stumbled. "Why?" I asked. Ethan's face did not soften. "Because the gala incident disrupted your employment. This corrects that." "You mean it controls it?" He stepped closer, voice low. "Call it whatever helps you sign." I wanted to throw the envelope back at him. I wanted to tell him I would rather drown than owe him again. Then I thought about Noah's fever. The clinic bill. The rent notice still taped to my door. By the time I walked into the foundation lobby that Friday, I already knew I had made a deal with the wrong kind of safety. And Victoria, waiting by the elevator in another flawless cream coat, made sure I felt it. She looked me over once and said, "Welcome to Ethan's world, Claire. Women like you do not last here." By noon on my first day at the Holloway Foundation, I had already learned the dress code, the coffee hierarchy, and exactly how fast a room could go cold when the wrong woman walked into it. Nobody said anything outright at first. They did not have to. It was in the glances. The pauses. The way conversations thinned out the second I stepped near them. I sat at my borrowed desk, trying to focus on donor spreadsheets while two assistants whispered by the printer like I was furniture. "That is her," one of them murmured. "From the gala?" The other one gave a soft laugh. I thought she would look more impressive, considering the attention. My face went hot. I kept typing. Fast. Hard. Like maybe the keys could drown them out. They could not. An hour later, Victoria made her move. She swept into the open office with a garment bag over one arm and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh," she said, stopping beside my desk. "No one told you?" The room got quiet so fast it hurt. I stood up slowly. "Told me what?" She unzipped the bag and held up a cream-tailored blazer. Elegant. Expensive. Impossible to ignore. Administrative staff attending donor meetings are expected to present properly. Her eyes skimmed my thrift store blouse. "I thought someone would have helped you before you embarrassed the foundation." A few people laughed. Soft. Polite. Worse than loud. Humiliation hit first. Then anger. Clean and instant. "If the foundation is this fragile," I said, "I am surprised a blazer is all it takes to protect it." Victoria's smile tightened. "Careful, Claire. Gratitude. Looks better on you than attitude." Before I could answer, another voice cut across the room. Low. Flat. Final. Then it is a good thing she was not hired for either. Every head turned. Ethan stood in the doorway of the conference wing, one hand in his pocket, expression carved from ice. Victoria recovered first. "Ethan, I was only trying to help." He did not even look at her. His gaze stayed on me, then swept the room. "If anyone here is confused about Ms. Bennett's role, let me clear it up. She works for me. Her resume, her clothes, and your private opinions are not group entertainment." Silence. Brutal and complete. Relief should have come first. It did not. Shame did. Because he had protected me, yes. But he had done it the way powerful men always did. Publicly. Efficiently. Like I was a problem to be handled. Ethan finally looked at Victoria. "My office. Now." Then he turned and walked away. The room stayed frozen for 3 full seconds before breathing again. I sat back down on unsteady legs and stared at the screen without seeing it. I should have felt safer. Instead, all I could think was this: if Ethan Holloway was willing to shut down a room for me, what exactly was he trying to keep from surfacing next? The first time I saw Ethan Holloway look helpless, it was because my 3-year-old son had slipped out of my hands and straight into his office. The day had already gone bad before 9 o'clock. Noah's daycare called. Plumbing issue. Early closure. My sister Lily was working a double shift and could not help. I stood in the foundation hallway with my phone pressed to my ear, panic climbing fast, while my supervisor said, "We cannot afford another absence this week, Claire." That was the whole choice. No childcare. No backup. No room to fail. So I brought Noah in with a coloring book, a snack cup, and one desperate promise. "Stay in the break room, baby. 10 minutes. Mommy just needs 10 minutes. He nodded. He meant it. But children are not built for adult disaster. One donor packet turned into 3. One printer jam turned into a scheduling mess. By the time I looked up, Noah was gone. Ice shot through me. I searched the hallway, the lobby, the copy room. Nothing. Then I heard his little voice through a half-open door. "It is snowing." I froze. Ethan's office. Of course. I pushed the door open and found Noah standing on a leather chair behind Ethan's desk, both hands wrapped around a glass snow globe. Ethan stood a few feet away, jacket off, sleeves rolled once, looking like he had not decided whether this was a security breach or a personal insult. "Noah." My voice came out too sharp. He turned, guilty for half a second, then pointed at the globe. "Mom, look. Tiny houses." I rushed forward. "I am so sorry. He should not be in here." Ethan's gaze stayed on Noah. "He did not break anything. That is not the point. It seems to be your point." I hated that he was calm. I hated more that Noah was not scared of him. Ethan stepped closer, slow enough not to startle him. "You like that?" Noah nodded and held up the globe. "Do you?" Ethan took it carefully, turned it once, and for the first time I heard something almost human in his voice. "My mother gave it to me when I was 6. Noah smiled like he had been handed treasure instead of history. "Can it stay here?" Ethan looked at him for one strange, soft second. "For now." That was all. 2 words. But they landed wrong. Too gentle. Too easy. Too dangerous. I took Noah's hand and backed toward the door before my face gave me away. Ethan finally looked at me then, and something unreadable passed between us. Because if Noah could pull softness out of a man like Ethan, then maybe the real danger was not that he would suspect the truth. Maybe it was that, for one stupid second, I wanted to see that look again. The next time Ethan looked at Noah, he did not look softened. He looked like a man doing math he did not want the answer to. I felt it before he said a word. It was in the way his eyes held a second too long on Noah's face when I picked him up from the foundation play corner the following afternoon. In the silence after Noah laughed at something Mason said. In the tension that pulled tight across Ethan's jaw every time my son turned his head just right. By evening, the air around Ethan had changed. Colder. Sharper. Like some private machine inside him had started running. I was gathering my bag when Mason appeared at my desk and said, "Mr. Holloway would like 5 minutes." I almost said no. Then I looked up and saw Ethan already waiting inside the glass conference room, one hand braced against the table, city lights cutting hard lines across his face. I walked in anyway. Bad decision. "You have excellent timing," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Is this where you tell me my son violated another billionaire boundary?" Ethan ignored the shot. "How old is Noah?" My stomach dropped so fast I had to lock my knees. "You know how old he is." "I want to hear you say it." His tone was calm. Too calm. I folded my arms. "He turned 3 in May." Ethan's eyes did not leave mine. 3 years old. Not a question. A measurement. Something dangerous moved under my ribs. "What exactly are you asking?" He took a slow breath, like he was choosing each word before it could become something worse. "I am asking why your son's age lines up almost perfectly with a weekend I lost 3 years ago." My pulse slammed. Outwardly, I went still. Inwardly, everything started breaking open. "People have children every day, Ethan. Do not do that." His voice dropped. "Do not turn this into coincidence when you know what I am talking about." I should have walked out. I should have lied better. Instead I stood there pinned between his suspicion and my own fear while the memory of that rainy night pressed against the room like a third presence. Then Ethan moved in for the kill without even raising his voice. "Boston. The Lenox Hotel. You told me betrayal wore a familiar face." I stopped breathing. He saw it. Of course he did. One flicker. One crack. Enough. Ethan's stare sharpened into something almost unbearable. So you do remember. I forced myself to swallow. You remembered too. He gave one short, humorless laugh. Not at first. But now I remember enough. That should have been the worst part. It was not. The worst part was what came next. Ethan took one step closer and said, quiet as a blade, "Tell me, Claire. Is Noah a coincidence, or is he the reason you have been afraid of me from the second I saw him?" The worst part was not that Ethan remembered Boston. It was that he said it like evidence. Like he had reached into the one night I had buried and pulled out a weapon. I stood in that glass conference room with my pulse hammering so hard it hurt, trying to keep my face still while his question hung between us. Is Noah a coincidence, or is he the reason you have been afraid of me from the second I saw him? I should have denied everything. Instead I said the one thing that bought me half a breath. You are making assumptions. Ethan's stare did not move. Am I? Then he did something worse than accusing me. He proved he remembered. His voice dropped, quieter now, almost too quiet to survive. You also told me you were tired of being chosen only when you were convenient. The room tilted. That sentence. Mine. Spoken back to me in his voice after 3 years. My nails bit into my palm. He saw it. Of course he did. So this is a memory test now? I asked. Or do billionaires collect women's confessions for sport? His jaw hardened. Do not turn this into that. Into what? I snapped. A man with power cornering a woman who cannot afford to fight back. Fear came fast. Hot. Ugly. Because if Ethan remembered that much, then maybe he remembered everything that mattered. And if he remembered everything, then maybe this whole job had never been charity. Maybe it had been surveillance. A slow trap with better lighting. I grabbed my bag before I could think better of it. I am done. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Done with what? This. I pointed between us. This office. This foundation. Your questions. Your control. My voice shook, but I did not care. I resign. The words landed hard. Clean. Final. For 1 second, Ethan just looked at me. Then he stepped in front of the door before I could reach it. Not touching. Not shouting. Somehow worse. No, I laughed once. Sharp and disbelieving. That is not your decision. It is while you are under contract. His tone went flat again. Businesslike. Ruthless. You do not get to disappear every time the truth gets close, Claire. My blood went cold. Truth. There it was. Not spoken plainly. Not yet. But close enough to burn. I lifted my chin. You think I owe you answers because you remember one night? Ethan held my gaze with that same terrible calm. No, a beat. Then the line that made my stomach drop. I am saying I do not like unfinished business. I should have pushed past him. I should have run anyway. But the way he said it did not sound like a job anymore. It sounded like a warning. And for the first time since Boston, I started to wonder whether Ethan Holloway was trying to uncover the truth, or force me to say it first. Daniel Mercer had a talent for showing up the second my life was already cracking. I opened my apartment door after work, still carrying grocery bags and Noah's dinosaur backpack, and there he was leaning against the hallway wall like the last 4 years had been a misunderstanding instead of a betrayal. My whole body went cold. Get out of here. Daniel pushed off the wall slowly, hands raised like he was the reasonable one. Claire, relax. I just want to talk. I almost laughed. You lost the right to want anything from me a long time ago. Noah was half asleep on my shoulder, warm and heavy, and that alone kept me from slamming the door in Daniel's face hard enough to rattle the building. He looked past me then, just for a second, toward Noah. Something ugly flickered in his eyes. Calculation. So that is him. My stomach tightened instantly. Do not look at my son. Daniel gave me that same smooth expression I used to mistake for charm. Come on. I am not here to cause trouble. I heard you are working for Holloway now. There it was. Not concern. Never concern. Information. I stepped into the hallway and pulled the door nearly shut behind me. Say what you came to say. He leaned in a little, lowering his voice like we shared a secret. People talk, Claire. Gala scandal. Private clinic. Ethan Holloway suddenly taking an interest in you. His eyes dropped again, this time more openly, toward Noah's little sneakers hanging near my hip. That kid is about the right age too, is he not? Heat rushed through me so fast I almost could not speak. You are disgusting. Daniel smiled. Small. Satisfied. So I am wrong? You do not get to ask me anything. My voice came out sharper now, shaking with anger I could barely hold. You used me. You lied to me. You do not get to stand in my hallway and act like you are owed the truth. For the first time, his face hardened. Careful. If Holloway has a son he does not know about, that is not just your truth anymore. The words hit like a slap. Not because he knew. Because he was close enough to smell blood. I pushed him back one full step and pointed at the stairs. Leave. He stared at me for one long second, then lifted both hands like he was backing off. Fine. But if I were you, I would figure out what that kid is worth before someone else does. He walked away smiling, and I stood there shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the lock. I thought that was the worst of it. It was not. Because when I turned back toward the kitchen, Lily was standing near the counter in her scrubs, pale as paper, and the first thing she whispered was, Claire, is Ethan Holloway Noah's father? The next day, I could still hear Lily's voice in my kitchen. Is Ethan Holloway Noah's father? I had not answered her. I could not. I left for work with my nerves already skinned raw. Noah dropped off early, my thoughts splitting in too many directions at once. By 5:30, the city felt wrong. Too watchful. I had barely stepped out of the foundation service exit when the first camera flash hit. White. Sharp. Blinding. Then another. Claire, over here. Is your son Ethan Holloway's? Did you trap him? My whole body locked. There were 3 of them. Maybe 4. Phones up. Lenses out. Smiling like this was entertainment. Public shame moves fast. Faster when a poor woman is the story. I spun and tried to shield my face, heart slamming hard enough to make me dizzy. Leave me alone. One of them pushed closer. Did Victoria Sinclair know about the child? That name hit like a match. Of course. Of course this was not random. I turned to run for the curb just as a black SUV cut across the street and stopped inches from the sidewalk. Mason was out first. Ms. Bennett. Get in. Now. I should have resisted. I did not. Survival 1. Again. The back door opened, and Ethan was already inside, expression cold enough to freeze the whole city. Move, he said. I got in. The door slammed. The SUV pulled away while camera flashes chased the windows. My breathing came fast, ugly, uneven. Was this you? I turned on him the second I could speak. Did you have me followed? Did you set this up so you could play hero again? Ethan's gaze cut to me, sharp and hard. If I had set it up, Claire, you would not have made it to that sidewalk alone. Do not talk to me like I am stupid. Then stop acting like you are the only one being targeted. His voice dropped lower. Dangerous now. Someone leaked your route, your shift end, and your connection to me. That is not gossip. That is intent. My hands shook in my lap. You mean your world is spilling onto mine? No, he said, jaw tight. I mean I am cleaning up a mess you do not understand yet. I stared at him, anger and fear colliding so hard I could barely think. Because that was the problem with Ethan Holloway. Even when he protected me, it felt like standing inside a storm that answered only to him. Then my phone buzzed. Lily. I opened the message and went cold. Claire, someone is outside the daycare asking questions about Noah. The second I read Lily's text, the only thing I could hear was my own pulse. Someone is outside the daycare asking questions about Noah. Turn around, I said. My voice came out sharp enough to cut. Ethan did not hesitate. Mason. The SUV shifted hard at the next light. I gripped my phone so tightly my hand hurt. If anything happens to him, Ethan cut in, cold and immediate. Nothing is happening to your son. I wanted to believe that. I hated that part of me did. By the time we reached the daycare, the sidewalk was clear except for one anxious teacher locking the front gate. Lily stood inside with Noah in her arms, pale and furious. The second I got out, Noah reached for me. I took him so fast he gave a tiny confused sound. Mommy. I kissed his hair and forced myself to breathe. Lily looked past me, saw Ethan, and stiffened. A woman came asking if Noah was connected to Holloway, she said. She said she was with a private family. Office. My blood ran cold. Not press. Worse. Controlled. Polished. Rich. Ethan's face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. Who? He asked. The teacher handed over a business card she had refused to accept. Margaret Holloway. The name meant nothing to the teacher. It meant everything to Ethan. His jaw locked so hard I could see it. Get them home, he told Mason. Now. No, I turned on him instantly. No more orders. Start explaining. Ethan looked at Noah first, then at me. My aunt sits on the Holloway board. If she is asking questions about your son, this stops being gossip. And becomes what? My voice rose before I could stop it. A legal strategy? He did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. Later that night, after Mason settled us into the SUV again, Ethan took a call he forgot I could hear. Margaret's voice came through the speaker, cool and precise. If there is even a possibility that boy carries the Holloway name, we need a discreet review immediately. Paternity, guardianship, exposure. Before this becomes an inheritance problem. I stopped breathing. Ethan's reply was quiet. Dangerous. He is not a problem. Margaret did not soften. Then do not act like a fool, Ethan. Act like a Holloway. The line went dead. I turned slowly toward him, Noah asleep against my chest, every fear I had ever buried rising at once. Because now I knew the truth. It was never just Ethan I had to fear. It was the machine behind him. And that machine had just started looking at my son. The first time we almost looked like a family, it happened under fluorescent school lights and paper stars taped to a cafeteria wall. Noah's preschool spring program was at 6, and at 5:22 I was still trapped in a foundation donor review while my phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from Lily. I slipped into the hallway and called back with my heart already sinking. Tell me you are there. Lily sounded breathless. I am stuck on the highway. There is a wreck. I am not making it. Cold panic hit fast. Noah had spent all week practicing one song, one line, one little wave from the risers. He is going to be looking for me, I whispered. Behind me, the conference room door opened. Ethan stepped out, jacket over one arm, eyes landing on my face before I could hide it. What happened? I should have said nothing. Instead, the truth came out raw. My son has a school event in 38 minutes and I cannot get there. Ethan took that in once. Quietly. Go. I gave a short, bitter laugh. I cannot. Your board does not pause because my life is inconvenient. His expression did not change. I did not ask what the board wants. I said go. When I hesitated, he picked up the donor file from my hand and said, low and final, I will finish it. By the time I made it to the school, breathless and guilty, Ethan was already there. Not in front. Not center stage. He stood in the back near the folding chairs, hands in his coat pockets, looking so out of place among paper streamers and juice boxes that the sight almost stopped me. Noah spotted us both at the same time from the risers and his whole face lit up. After the songs, after the handprint art and the chaos and crayons, Noah ran straight past me and crashed into Ethan's leg first. You came. Ethan looked down at him like he had not expected the impact to land that deep. I said I would stay in the background, he answered. Noah frowned in total seriousness. You are too tall for background. I actually laughed. Ethan glanced at me then, and something warm and dangerous passed between us before either of us could stop it. Later, outside under the parking lot lights, Noah fell asleep on Ethan's shoulder for the short walk to my car. The sight hit me so hard I had to look away. Because for one fragile, impossible stretch of time, it felt easy. Too easy. Ethan shifted Noah gently into my arms and said, quieter than usual, he was looking for you the second he walked on stage. I swallowed against the ache in my throat. Thank you for coming. Ethan held my gaze. You do not have to thank me for showing up. That was the moment. The exact moment. The truth rose all the way to my mouth. Ethan, there is a reason he looks for you too. I almost said it. I almost gave everything away. Then I saw headlights sweep across the lot and caught the dark silhouette of a black sedan idling at the curb. Holloway security. Holloway control. Holloway consequence. The words died before they could live. And Ethan, watching my face change, said softly, Claire, what were you about to tell me? The softest night was exactly what made the next one unbearable. I could still feel Noah's weight leaving Ethan's shoulder when I walked into the foundation the next morning and heard Margaret Holloway's voice through the half-open boardroom door. I stopped before I could think better of it. The boy is attached already, she said, cool and precise. That makes timing even more important. My blood went cold. Ethan said nothing. Another male voice answered instead, some lawyer I did not know. If paternity is confirmed, we recommend immediate protective filing. Temporary restrictions, controlled access, public silence until exposure risk is managed. Managed. My son. Reduced to a risk assessment in a room with polished wood and expensive water glasses. I could not breathe. Then Margaret again, sharper now. Claire Bennett is unstable by profile. Low income. No father listed. Sporadic employment. If Ethan intends to claim the child, we cannot leave the mother in full control. That was it. Whatever softness I had let in last night died right there outside that door. I backed away before anyone saw me and moved fast, my pulse slamming so hard it hurt. By the time Ethan found my desk 30 minutes later, it was empty. Mine and Noah's essentials were already in 2 duffel bags in the trunk of Lily's car. I did not leave a note. I did not owe one. I signed Noah out of preschool early, kept my sunglasses on even though it was cloudy, and told Lily to drive without asking questions until we hit the next county line. She looked over once, pale. Claire, what happened? I stared out the window and held Noah's hand in the back seat. I made the mistake of believing a powerful man could care without trying to own what he touched. My phone started ringing before we reached the interstate. Ethan. Once. Twice. 6 times. I let every call die. Then a text came through. Where are you? I deleted it. Another followed immediately. Claire, answer me. Still no. The third one landed harder because it was shorter. Did you hear something? I laughed once. Bitter. Empty. Of course he knew. Of course he knew exactly what kind of damage those words could do. By dusk, Lily pulled into a roadside motel with faded blue doors and a vacancy sign flickering in the rain. I had almost convinced myself I had gotten out clean. Then my phone buzzed one more time. Not a text this time. A location pin. Accurate to the motel parking lot. Followed by 6 words that made every nerve in my body lock. We need to talk. I am outside. I should have kept the door locked. Instead I stood there in that cheap motel room with Noah asleep in the bed behind me, Lily frozen by the dresser, and Ethan Holloway waiting outside like he had every right to follow me across county lines and demand the truth. I stepped into the rain before he could come in. You do not get to track me. My voice came out low and furious. Ethan looked like he had not slept. Coat damp. Jaw tight. Eyes darker than usual. You disappeared with a 3-year-old after overhearing half a conversation. Half was enough. I laughed once, sharp and broken. Protective filing. Controlled access. The mother in full control. Tell me which part one misunderstood. His stare held mine. Hard. Unblinking. You misunderstood who was speaking for me. That machine is your world, Ethan. I jabbed a finger toward him. You do not get to separate yourself from it when it is convenient. For 1 second, anger flashed through his face. Real anger. Not cold control. And you do not get to vanish every time something scares you. The words hit because they were too close to the truth. I folded my arms tight across my chest. You want honesty? Fine. Here it is. Men with power do not ask for trust. They position for leverage. Rain ran down my hair, my neck, the back of my sweater. Ethan took one slow step closer. Then answer one question and I will stop positioning for anything. My pulse kicked hard. I already knew the question before he asked it. Is Noah my son? There it was. No more half measures. No more careful wording. The truth standing in the rain between us. I looked away first. Toward the flickering vacancy sign. Toward the dark motel parking lot. Toward anywhere but his face. You do not get to ask that like it is simple. Ethan's voice dropped lower. Rougher now. It is not simple. It is. The only thing that matters. My throat burned. Because part of me wanted to scream yes just to stop carrying it alone. Another part wanted to keep that word locked away forever, where rich families and legal teams could not touch it. I met his eyes again and forced the question back at him, the only shield I had left. If I say yes, Ethan, what exactly happens to me and Noah? He went still. Not shocked. Not offended. Just still. And in that silence, I got my answer. Because Ethan Holloway, for all his certainty, could not promise the one thing I needed most. By morning, the motel room felt too quiet. That was the first sign something had already gone wrong. Ethan had left before dawn after standing in my silence too long, and I had spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying the look on his face when I did not answer. Not anger. Not exactly. Something worse. A man standing 1 inch from the truth and being denied it again. Noah was eating dry cereal from a paper cup when Lily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She looked at the screen, frowned, then went pale so fast my stomach dropped. Claire. Her voice shook. Do not open anything online. Too late. I grabbed my phone and saw the headline before she could stop me. Billionaire heir Ethan Holloway linked to mystery single mother and secret child. Under it were photos. Me outside the clinic. Me getting into Ethan's SUV. Me holding Noah while Ethan looked at him like the rest of the world had disappeared. My hands went cold. The article was filth dressed as reporting. Ambitious worker. Hidden child. Strategic timing. Social climb. Every word built to turn me into exactly what women like Victoria had always wanted me to look like. Then I saw the worst line of all. Sources suggest the child may be leverage in a private family dispute. Leverage. My son reduced to a weapon before breakfast. Noah looked up at me with milk on his chin. Mommy? I locked the phone and forced my face still. Nothing, baby. But it was not nothing. Because an hour later, another article hit. This one cleaner. Meaner. A photo of Victoria at some charity luncheon, smiling in cream silk while the caption praised her grace under personal rumor. She did not have to say my name. The contrast did all the work for her. Refined woman. Scandal woman. Wife material. Trap. My blood burned. Lily whispered, "This is targeted." I know. The words came out flat because anger had already moved past heat and into clarity. Then my phone rang. Daniel. Of course. I let it go to voicemail. His message came through 30 seconds later, smug and familiar. Told you to figure out what that kid was worth before someone else did. I actually stopped breathing for a second. Because now I knew. This was not gossip. It was design. Someone had fed the press just enough truth to make me drown in the rest. Then another notification hit my screen. Not news this time. A live press alert from Holloway Holdings. Ethan Holloway to make a public statement at noon. Lily looked at me, terrified. I looked back at the article calling my son leverage and felt something crack open inside me. Because Ethan was about to step in front of cameras, and I had no idea if he was going to protect us, or erase us completely. I watched Ethan's statement on Lily's cracked phone screen with Noah curled against my side and every muscle in my body braced for impact. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Ethan stepped to the podium in a dark coat and a face carved from ice. No smile. No hesitation. Just that same terrifying calm he used when he had already decided how the room was going to end. The first question came fast. Mr. Holloway, is the child in the photos yours? Another voice piled on. Is Claire Bennett involved with you personally? Ethan did not flinch. He let the noise burn itself out, then said, low and final, Ms. Bennett and her son are private individuals. They are not targets for speculation, harassment, or public entertainment. My breath caught. He did not deny us. He did not explain us either. He just stepped between us and the knives. A reporter tried again. So you are refusing to deny a connection? Ethan's gaze turned colder. I am stating clearly that anyone using their names, their images, or their movements to manufacture scandal will be met with legal action from my office personally. Personally. The word landed hard. Deliberate. Protective. Dangerous. Lily turned to me slowly. Claire, I could not answer. Because. Relief hit first. Hot and immediate. Then fear came right behind it. Ethan was shielding us with the only thing bigger than the story itself. His name. His reach. His power. And power like that never arrived empty. By noon, every headline had shifted. Not gone. Shifted. Ethan Holloway issues warning. Holloway heir defends woman at center of rumor storm. Victoria Sinclair leaves charity event without comment. That last one came with a photo of Victoria getting into a town car, face tight, cameras everywhere. Public humiliation. For once, not mine. It should have felt good. It did not. Because 20 minutes later, my phone rang from a blocked number, and this time I answered. You made a statement, I said before Ethan could speak. You made yourselves vulnerable, he replied. I changed the battlefield. I stood by the motel window, staring out at the wet parking lot, Noah's coloring pages spread across the bed behind me. You changed my life again without asking. Ethan went quiet for one beat too long. Then he said, rougher than usual, would you rather I let them tear you apart? I had no answer for that. Not an honest one. Because the truth was cruel. A part of me was grateful. A part of me was terrified. And both parts hated how much control he still had over whether my son and I got to breathe in peace. Then Ethan said the one thing that turned all my relief back into fear. Claire, this does not end with the press. My family is moving. Noah's breathing changed at 2:14 in the morning. That was how the next fight started. Not with lawyers. Not with headlines. With the sound every mother learns to fear too fast. I was asleep in the motel chair when I heard it, a thin strained pull in his chest that snapped me upright before I was fully awake. Noah sat up coughing, one hand pressed to his ribs, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Mommy. I was already moving. Inhaler. Bag. Shoes. My hands shook so hard I dropped the cap twice. Lily grabbed her keys, but my phone was already ringing. Ethan. I answered on instinct. He cannot breathe. That was all I got out. Ethan's voice turned sharp immediately. Stay where you are. I am 2 minutes away. I should have said no. I should have hung up. Instead, I held Noah against me and counted seconds between breaths while panic clawed through my throat. Ethan was there in less than 2 minutes, coat half-buttoned, hair damp from the night air, looking nothing like a billionaire and too much like a man who had run on fear alone. He did not waste one word. Give him to me. I hesitated. Ethan's eyes locked on mine. Claire. Not cold. Not commanding. Urgent. Human. I let go. At the hospital, everything blurred into bright lights, fast wheels, clipped voices. Pediatric respiratory distress. Nebulizer. Monitoring. Observation. I stood outside the treatment room feeling useless and furious and more terrified than I had let myself be in years. Ethan stayed. He did not pace. He did not take calls. He sat beside Noah's bed after the worst passed and let my son hold 2 fingers while the medicine made him sleepy. You stayed, Noah whispered, his voice rough and small. Ethan bent closer. I said I would show up. I looked away because something inside me went dangerously soft at the sound of that. Later, when the nurse came in with discharge planning forms, she glanced between us and smiled like the answer was obvious. Dad, I need family history on the paternal side too. The word hit the room and stayed there. Dad. Ethan did not correct her. Neither did I. For one impossible second, the silence felt less like a lie and more like gravity pulling us somewhere neither of us was ready to name. Then Noah, half asleep, reached for Ethan again and mumbled, "Stay till I wake up." Ethan's face changed in a way I felt all the way through me. "I am here," he said quietly. And hearing him say it, hearing my son believe it so easily, I realized the truth was no longer just a secret I was protecting. It was a line I was forcing 2 people I cared about to live beside without crossing. The truth came out because a nurse asked for a form I could not lie on anymore. Morning light had turned the hospital room thin and colorless by the time Noah finally drifted into real sleep. Ethan was still there. Same chair. Same coat. Same impossible steadiness. The nurse stepped in with discharge papers and a clipboard. "I still need family history from the father's side," she said. Gently. Asthma, cardiac issues, anything hereditary. My hand froze over the pen. I could fill out every line about myself. Allergies. My mother's migraines. My father's blood pressure. Then I hit the blank space under paternal history, and it felt like the whole room narrowed around that one white box. The nurse waited. "Ma'am?" I could not breathe. "I do not know," I lied. Too fast. Too brittle. Ethan looked up from Noah instantly. He saw it. Of course he did. The nurse gave me a sympathetic smile and set the clipboard on the tray. I will come back. The door clicked shut. Silence rushed in. Ethan stood slowly, like any sudden move might shatter what was left between us. Claire. Just my name. Nothing else. That somehow made it worse. I kept staring at the form. Do not. My voice sounded thin. Do not ask me anything right now. Ethan came closer anyway. Not touching. Never touching when it mattered most. One last time, he said, quieter than I had ever heard him. Tell me the truth. I laughed once, and it broke in the middle. The truth? I looked up at him then, all the fear, rage, exhaustion, and love I had been carrying burning through at once. You want the truth now? After lawyers. After press. After your family turned my son into an inheritance question? Ethan did not flinch. Yes. One word. No defense. No excuse. Just yes. That was what undid me. I looked at Noah sleeping between us, his lashes still damp, his little hand curled around the edge of the blanket, and I could not make myself protect the lie anymore. He is yours, I whispered. The room went so still it felt unreal. Ethan did not speak. He just stared at me, then at Noah, then back at me like the floor had dropped out from under him and he was still falling. When he finally found his voice, it was not anger that came first. It was hurt. Raw. Astonished. 3 years. I swallowed hard. I tried to call. Ethan's jaw tightened, but the damage had already landed. 3 years, he repeated, like he could not fit the number inside his chest. Then he turned and walked out before I could say another word. He did not slam the door. He did not accuse me. Somehow that silence hurt more. Because now the truth was finally free, and all I could hear was the sound of the man I loved most walking away from the son he had just learned was his. The first thing Ethan Holloway sent me after learning Noah was his son was not an apology. It was paperwork. Mason arrived at the hospital just after noon, carrying a slim legal folder like it weighed nothing. I knew what it was before he said a word. Men like Ethan never bled first. They formalized. Ms. Bennett, Mason said carefully, this is not a custody action. My laugh came out cold. That must be why it comes in a lawyer's envelope. Noah was asleep again, turned toward the window, his little dinosaur blanket tucked under his chin. I stepped into the hallway and took the folder with shaking hands. Petition for immediate legal recognition. Emergency parental standing. Temporary medical authority. The words blurred. My throat closed so hard it hurt. Not a custody action. Just the beginning of one. He could not even call me himself? Mason's jaw tightened. Mr. Holloway is trying to secure Noah before his family moves first. I looked up so fast my neck hurt. By moving before me? My voice cracked sharper now. Tell Ethan that if he wants to prove he is different from the machine behind him, sending paperwork before one human sentence was a spectacular failure. Mason did not defend him. That scared me more than if he had. Ethan came at dusk. No security swarm. No boardroom armor. Just him in the doorway of Noah's hospital room looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 hours. I stood before he could speak. You do not get to send legal documents to my hospital room and call that fatherhood. Ethan took the hit without flinching. I am not trying to take him from you. Then why was I served before I was spoken to? That landed. I saw it. Good. Let it. Ethan dragged a hand over his face, then looked at Noah sleeping between us. Because the second I knew he was mine, I knew my family would try to control the situation. I am making sure no one can cut me out of his life. I stared at him, furious tears burning behind my eyes. And I am supposed to feel better because you are only protecting yourself. First, not last. Ethan stepped closer, voice low and raw in a way I had almost never heard. I am protecting him. With your name, I shot back. With your lawyers. With your rules. My chest hurt. My hands would not stop shaking. You still do not understand. The first thing I needed from you was not power. It was reassurance. Ethan went still. Completely still. For one brutal second, all the anger between us gave way to something worse. Recognition. He had chosen the only language he trusted, and it was the exact language I feared most. Then Noah stirred softly in the bed, and Ethan's eyes moved to him like a wound reopening. Claire, he said, quiet and wrecked, I do not know how to do this without building something I can hold on to. And hearing that, I realized the truth had not made this simpler. It had only changed the shape of the war. The next crack in Ethan did not come from him. It came from Mason. Noah had been discharged, Lily had taken him downstairs for juice, and I was standing by the hospital window trying to remember how to breathe when Mason stepped into the room and closed the door softly behind him. You hate him right now, he said. I let out a cold laugh. That is the safest version of what I feel. Mason took that without blinking. Then you should know why he reacts the way he does. I folded my arms. This should be good. His voice stayed even. When Ethan was 16, the Holloway family nearly broke apart over a hidden affair and a child no one wanted publicly acknowledged. His mother buried the scandal. His father controlled the fallout. Ethan learned two things very young. Secrets destroy families. And power decides who survives them. The words landed harder than I wanted. Not because they excused him. Because they fit. I looked away first. That explains him. It does not absolve him. He is not asking for absolution. Mason paused. He is panicking. That should not have mattered. Somehow it did. Later that afternoon, Ethan came back. No folder. No lawyers. Just a man carrying too much and wearing it badly. He stopped a few feet from me, eyes locked on mine. I found the call record. My pulse stumbled. What? His voice roughened. 3 years ago. You called. My office. You left your name with an assistant. You were blocked before it reached me. The room went still around us. I could barely hear my own breathing. Ethan swallowed once, hard. And Victoria's press team received internal notice about you the same week she started circling the story. I stared at him. So all this time, you did try, he said quietly. No defense left now. No arrogance. Just damage. And I did not know. The pain in his face cut clean through my anger for one dangerous second. Then he added, almost like it hurt to say it, I failed you before I even knew what I was losing. I should have stepped back. I should have held on to the version of him that was easier to blame. Instead I stood there with too much new truth in the room between us, feeling the shape of the past shift under my feet. Because if I had been wrong about why he disappeared, then maybe Ethan had been wrong about why I stayed silent. And that meant the story we had both built our pain around was starting to collapse. The first time I saw Ethan turn his anger away from me, it felt almost as shocking as the truth itself. We were back at my apartment because Noah refused to sleep anywhere but his own bed, and Ethan had come by with what he called updates. I almost told him to leave on sight. Then he said Victoria's name, and I went still. She knew before the press did, Ethan said, standing in my tiny kitchen like the room was too small for what he carried into it. Mason traced internal calls from my office to a consulting contact on her team. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. So she fed them enough to make me look dirty. Ethan's jaw locked. Yes. One brutal word. No softening. No excuse. Then he added, colder now, Margaret knew too. Not all of it. Enough to let the pressure build. For a second I could only stare at him. Because hearing it confirmed should have felt like victory. Instead it felt like proof that I had never really been fighting one person. I had been fighting a system with polished nails and better lawyers. Ethan took a breath, then handed me his phone. A message thread. Daniels. Name. Bank transfers. Photos attached. Clinic parking lot. Foundation exit. Noah in my arms. My stomach turned. He sold us. Ethan's voice went flat. He sold you. He did not know for certain about Noah. He only knew scandal was worth money. Rage hit clean and fast. Daniel had always been a coward. I just had not realized how cheap he was. What did you do? Ethan's eyes lifted to mine. I ended his access to every Holloway contract line he was trying to leverage. Then I sent the evidence to legal. I looked down at the screen again, then back at him. And Victoria? Something dangerous moved across his face. She is no longer welcome in any foundation space, any board event, or any personal function tied to me. That landed harder than I expected. Not because I cared about Victoria. Because I knew what it cost him. People like Ethan did not publicly cut off women like her without detonating something in their own world. He saw the question in my face before I asked it. They wanted you cornered, he said quietly. They do not get to use my name to do it. I should have distrusted the line. A part of me still did. But another part, the part that had been standing alone in humiliation for so long, felt something shift. Because for the first time, Ethan was not just protecting me from strangers. He was choosing conflict with his own world. And that made him more dangerous to love than ever. The truth finally stopped circling us and came straight through the middle. Noah was asleep in his room. Lily had taken the trash out just to give us air. The apartment was quiet except for the old refrigerator humming in the kitchen and the sound of Ethan standing there like he did not know whether to step closer or leave. I made the choice for both of us. I did not hide Noah to punish you. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I hid him because I was afraid. Ethan's face tightened, but he did not interrupt. So I kept going. Afraid of your name. Afraid of your family. Afraid that one day I would wake up and find out I was just the woman who carried your son until a better world came to collect him. The words hurt coming out. They hurt more because they were true. Ethan dragged a hand over his mouth and looked away for one beat, like he needed to physically absorb the hit. And I have been angry, he said at last, voice low and rough, because you stole the chance to know him from me before I ever even had it. I flinched. Not because he raised his voice. He did not. Because pain sounds worse when it stays controlled. Ethan looked toward Noah's door, then back at me. 3 years of first words. Birthdays. Fevers. Nightmares. You got all of it. His jaw locked hard. And I got nothing. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I kept my chin up. Do you think that was easy? Do you think I wanted to do any of that alone? My chest tightened. I would rather work 3 jobs and count every dollar forever than stand in a courtroom while someone with your last name explains why I only get weekends with my own child. That landed hard. I saw it. Ethan's expression changed in one raw, unguarded second. The anger stayed. So did the hurt. But something else broke through under both. Understanding. Claire. He stepped closer then stopped himself, like restraint was the only thing holding him together. I do not want to take Noah from you. His voice dropped even lower. I want in. 4 letters. Simple. Devastating. I stared at him, heart pounding, because that was the first time he had said it without lawyers, without strategy, without armor. Just a man asking to be let into the life he had missed. And that should have made everything easier. Instead it left me with a different fear entirely. Because wanting in and knowing how to love without destroying the door were not the same thing. The next time Ethan showed up, he did not bring lawyers. He brought surrender. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind men perform when they still think they are winning. Quiet surrender. Measurable. Real. He stood in my doorway holding a single folder, plain gray, no gold stamp, no legal team behind him, and said, "Before you say anything, I withdrew the emergency motions." I froze. What? Ethan handed me the papers and stayed where he was, like he knew distance was part of the proof now. No immediate parental standing. No temporary medical authority. No restrictions. Those are gone. My eyes moved across the pages too fast, then back again slower, checking for traps, hidden clauses, some sharper version beneath the language. Why? Ethan's voice stayed low. Because you were right. I came at this like losing Noah meant I had to grab harder. That is not fatherhood. That is panic. The words hit harder than any defense would have. He took one breath, then added, "I also removed my family's legal team." That got my full attention. You did what? Margaret's attorneys are out. Board counsel is out. Anyone treating Noah like an asset is out. His jaw tightened, but he did not look away. You choose the mediator. I stared at him. I choose. Child-centered. Independent. Your call. For one strange second, I did not know what to do with the feeling that moved through me. It was not trust yet. Not fully. But it was the first clean crack in fear. Ethan saw it and did not push. Thank God he did not push. Later that afternoon, the mediator I picked came by the apartment. A woman in her 50s. Warm eyes. No interest in power games. She talked about routines, stability, transitions, comfort objects, bedtime patterns. Not ownership. Not leverage. Just Noah. When she left, Ethan stayed on the floor beside the coffee table helping Noah line up dinosaur stickers across a coloring page. This one is fast, Noah said, holding up a green one with a missing tail. Ethan took it like it mattered. Then he probably thinks before he runs. Noah grinned. Like you. I looked up too fast. Ethan did not answer right away. Then he smiled, small and stunned, like the moment had slipped under his guard before he could stop it. That night, when Ethan stood to leave, Noah looked up from the couch and asked the question that changed something I could actually feel. Are you coming back tomorrow? Ethan's eyes lifted to mine first. Not asking permission with words. Asking it with everything else. And for the first time, I realized the door between us was no longer locked. It was simply waiting to see whether he knew how to walk through it gently. The call came while Ethan was helping Noah build a cardboard rocket on my living room floor. He glanced at the screen, and I watched the color leave his face. 1 degree at a time. Not panic. Worse. Decision. He stood slowly. I have to take this. Noah barely looked up. Do not be long. Ethan managed a nod and stepped onto the fire escape outside my kitchen window, but old apartments carry sound through everything. I did not mean to listen. I just heard Margaret's voice anyway. Crisp. Furious. If you legitimize that boy publicly outside board review, the succession vote is gone. You will lose your seat, Ethan. My whole body went still. Ethan did not answer right away. Margaret pressed harder. Choose carefully. A private arrangement can still be controlled. A public claim cannot. Public claim. My chest tightened. So that was the final price. Not just gossip. Not just family outrage. His future. His company. His name in the only world that had ever trained him how to survive. Ethan's voice came low and flat. Noah is not an arrangement. Margaret snapped back instantly. Then you are thinking like a father, not a Holloway. The line cut. Silence followed. Heavy. Metallic. I stepped back before he came in, but not far enough to hide what I had heard. Ethan entered the kitchen, eyes landing on me first, then on Noah in the next room. He knew. Of course he knew. Claire. Just my name. Tired. Careful. Dangerous because it almost sounded honest. I folded my arms tight across my chest. How much does it cost? His brow tightened. What? Us. My voice came out sharper than I planned. How much does it cost you to say Noah is your son where people can hear it? Ethan stared at me for one long second, and I saw the answer before he gave it. A lot. Maybe everything. That should have made me angry. Instead it made me sad in a way I did not want. I am not asking you to burn your life down for us, I said quietly. I never asked for that. Ethan took one step closer. That is not what this is. Is it not? I shot back. Because from where I stand, your world still wants me private, manageable, and grateful. The words hit. I saw them hit. Good. Ethan's jaw locked, but his eyes did not leave mine. You think I do not know that? I think, I said, my throat tight now, that hidden love always comes with a nicer word before it becomes abandonment. The room went silent behind that. Noah laughed from the living room, still playing with his rocket, completely unaware that the rest of us were standing on a fault line. Ethan looked toward the sound, then back at me, something final gathering in his face. And in that moment I knew the next move would decide everything, because Ethan Holloway was finally out of room to protect us quietly. The moment I saw Ethan on that stage, I knew he had already chosen a side. The Holloway Foundation ballroom was packed wall to wall with donors, cameras, board members, and the kind of polished smiles that only existed to survive public bloodshed. I stood in the back with Lily and Noah on my hip, half hidden behind a column, because I had told myself I only came to see how badly this would end. Margaret Holloway stood near the front in silver silk, poised like she still believed the script belonged to her. Then Ethan stepped to the podium, took one look at the prepared remarks waiting there, and pushed them aside. The room shifted instantly. Before this event continues, he said, voice low and carrying anyway, there is something I need to correct publicly. My heart stopped. Margaret went still. So did everyone else. Ethan's gaze moved once across the room and found me. Not by accident. Never by accident. Claire Bennett is not a scandal attached to my name, he said. The words hit like a shockwave. She is a woman I failed once, then nearly failed again by letting other people define her before I spoke for myself. The room went dead quiet. I could actually hear my own breathing. Margaret moved first. Ethan. A warning. Sharp. Controlled. He did not even look at her. And Noah Bennett is my son. No build. No hedge. No softer language to make it easier for his world to swallow. Just truth. Clean and public and irreversible. The cameras exploded. Gasps rippled through the room. Lily grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Noah looked up at me, confused by the noise, then toward the man at the front of the room who had just changed his life in one sentence. Ethan kept going, his voice turning colder now, harder, aimed straight at the people who thought they could manage us in private. No board seat. No inheritance concern, and no social alliance will decide what kind of father I am or who my family is. That was when Margaret's face finally cracked. Not much. Just enough. Ethan stepped away from the podium then, down off the stage, through the parted crowd, through every last person who had ever looked at me like I was too small for this world, and stopped right in front of me. His eyes locked on mine, steady and completely exposed. I am done hiding what matters, he said quietly. The whole room was still watching. Cameras. Board members. Every hungry pair of eyes. But for one impossible second it felt like there was only him, only Noah, only the choice now sitting open between us. Because Ethan Holloway had finally chosen us in public. And I had no idea if I was brave enough to believe him. The room was still roaring around us when Noah reached for Ethan without fear, and somehow that quiet little gesture landed harder than every camera flash in the ballroom. Ethan took one step closer, then stopped like he understood this part had to be my choice now, not his. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time there was nowhere left for either of us to hide. Not behind money. Not behind fear. Not behind the story other people wrote for us. I am still angry, I said. My voice shook, but I let it. About Boston. About the years you lost. About the years I carried this alone. Ethan nodded once, slow and steady. You should be. That answer cracked something open in me. No defense. No control. Just truth. But I do not doubt you anymore, I said, and saying it out loud felt like setting down a weight I had dragged for too long. Ethan's eyes changed then, not softer exactly, but clearer. More human. Claire, he said, low enough that the whole ballroom disappeared around the sound of my name, I am sorry I used power where I should have used trust. I do not want a version of you that is easier for my world to accept. I want you. And I want him. Both. Fully. Noah looked between us, then tugged on Ethan's sleeve with complete 3-year-old certainty. Are we going home now? I laughed through the tears I had been fighting. All night. Ethan actually smiled, small and stunned and real, then crouched to Noah's level. If your mom wants to, he said. There it was. Not a claim. Not an order. A choice placed back where it should have been. I took one breath, then another, and stepped closer until the space between us stopped feeling like a battlefield and started feeling like something we had finally survived. Yes, I whispered. We are going home. Later, in my tiny apartment with Noah asleep between us on the couch after insisting he needed both sides, the silence felt different than it used to. Not empty. Not waiting for the next disaster. Ethan brushed a loose curl off Noah's forehead, then looked at me with all that hard-earned tenderness he had nearly missed the chance to learn. I leaned back against him and let myself believe in something I had denied for years. Not that pain could be erased. It could not. But that love, when chosen in the open and held with care instead of control, could still build a family strong enough to outlive it.